Bandara riotous, open embrace. Jungkook does not want to let go of Jimin. Airplane loudly fire. A riot erupts at the airport as Jungkook clings to Jimin. Secrets surface. Fear collides with love, and one embrace defies the world. Don't let them take you. If you go now, I'll break, Jungkook said, his voice cracking as alarms wailed and the glass walls of the terminal trembled. The shout was swallowed by chaos. Sirens braided with screams. Shoes skidded on polished floors slick with spilled coffee and panic. Somewhere, a departure board flickered, letters stuttering like a failing heartbeat. Jungkook's arms locked around Jimin at gate C12, a human barricade against the pull of uniforms and protocols, against the inevitability of a flight that had already been called twice. Jimin felt the tremor in Jungkook's chest before he heard it in his voice. He smelled metal and ozone, the sharp tang of fear, and the familiar citrus of Jungkook's cologne that grounded him even as everything else came undone. He pressed his forehead to Jungkook's shoulder, eyes closing for a half-second, long enough to remember why this moment mattered, why leaving felt like betrayal even if staying could destroy them both. "Jungkook," Jimin murmured, trying to sound steady while his pulse thundered. "Breathe, you promised." Promises were fragile things. Jungkook had learned that early, how they could snap under pressure, how words could betray the heart. He shook his head, jaw clenched, eyes wild and shining. Around them, security formed a tightening ring. Cameras flashed like lightning. Someone shouted their names, stretching them into weapons. The riot hadn't started as a riot. It had begun with a delay, a rumor, a raised voice. Then the crowd surged, fed by anger and curiosity, by the intoxicating idea that something forbidden was happening right here, right now. Jungkook felt the old fear rise, being watched, being owned by expectations he never signed for. His hands tightened as if Jimin were an anchor in a storm. Jimin's fear was quieter, more insidious. He feared the way Jungkook's grip told a truth neither of them had dared say aloud. He feared the part of himself that wanted to stay, to burn every bridge and build a life from the ashes of this terminal. He feared that if he looked up, he would see the decision reflected in Jungkook's eyes and lose the strength to board that plane. A security officer stepped forward, voice firm but not unkind. "Sir, please release him. You're causing a disturbance." Jungkook laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "A disturbance?" He glanced at the shuddering crowd, the shaking glass. "This is what happens when you push people until they snap." Jimin lifted his head. His gaze met Jungkook, and the world narrowed to that space between them, the shared history written in glances and half-finished sentences. He reached up, fingers brushing Jungkook's wrist, a small, habitual touch, the way he soothed him when sleep wouldn't come. Jungkook flinched, not away but closer, as if the contact had pierced something raw. "Listen to me," Jimin said softly. "If I miss this flight, there are consequences, not just for me." The truth hovered, heavy. Jungkook knew it. He had watched Jimin carry responsibilities like invisible weights, had memorized the way his smile faltered when duty called. He had pretended not to notice the late-night calls, the coded language, the careful erasure of details. He had told himself love could wait. "I don't care," Jungkook whispered, and for a terrifying second he meant it. He imagined the relief of choosing only this, choosing Jimin over the world. The fantasy burned bright and brief. The terminal lights flickered. A child cried. Somewhere a glass panel shattered, the sound slicing through the air. The riot crested and fell in waves, bodies pressing, then recoiling. Jungkook felt hands on his shoulders now, firm, insistent. He braced, muscles coiled, but Jimin's palm flattened against his chest, right over his heart. "Jungkook," Jimin said, using his name like a key. "Look at me." He did. He always did. Jimin's eyes were wet but resolute. There was fear there, yes, but also something steadier, resolve forged from years of choosing the harder path. "You don't have to let go because you don't love me," Jimin said. "You let go because you do." The words hurt more than any shove. Jungkook's breath hitched. He tasted salt. The noise receded, replaced by the memory of quiet mornings, of shared headphones, of hands brushing in the dark. He remembered the first time Jimin had taught him how to breathe through panic, counting seconds like stepping stones. He tried to count now. 1, 2, 3. I'm not strong like you, Jungkook said. Jimin smiled, small and aching. You are, you just forget. Another announcement echoed, final call reverberating through the terminal. Time lunged forward. Jungkook felt the decision tear through him, a clean, brutal rip. His fingers loosened, one by one, as if releasing a lifeline. But he didn't step back. Instead, he leaned in, forehead to forehead, blocking out the world for a heartbeat. He whispered, "Come back to me." Jimin closed his eyes, breathing in Jungkook's warmth, the safety of this circle they had built against everything else. He nodded once, a promise shaped like hope. Then he turned, surrendering himself to the pull of the gate, to the future that demanded his courage. As Jimin disappeared down the jet bridge, the riot thinned, the storm passing as quickly as it had come. Jungkook stood in the aftermath, chest hollow and burning, hands shaking as if they still held Jimin's weight. The terminal smelled of spilled coffee and regret. Glass crunched underfoot. He watched until the door closed, until there was nothing left to see but reflections, his own face fractured in the glass. Jungkook pressed his palm to the cool surface, grounding himself in the ache, in the certainty that love had not ended here. It had simply learned a new shape, one that would demand patience, bravery, and faith. Outside, the plane lifted into the gray sky. Inside, Jungkook breathed, counted, and stayed standing. The city beyond the airport breathed differently at night, heavier, as if it knew something fragile had been carried through its veins and released into the dark. Jungkook didn't remember leaving the terminal. He remembered the cold air on his face, the way his phone vibrated endlessly in his pocket, the echo of Jimin's last look looping in his head like a bruise you can't stop touching. By the time he reached the car, his hands were shaking so badly he had to sit there with the engine off, forehead pressed to the steering wheel, counting breaths the way Jimin had taught him. 1, 2, 3. His phone rang again. A different vibration this time. He knew the number before he looked. "Taehyung," Jungkook said, voice flat, already tired of defending himself. "What the hell was that?" the manager snapped. Skipping any pretense. "Do you have any idea how bad this looks? You caused a riot. There are videos everywhere." Jungkook laughed under his breath. "I didn't start anything. I just didn't let go." There was a pause, sharp with disbelief. "This isn't a movie. Feelings don't excuse damage. Sponsors are calling. We need a statement." "A statement," Jungkook repeated, tasting the emptiness of the word. "About what? About loving someone enough to look stupid in public." Silence again, heavier this time. "Go home," the manager said finally, voice controlled. "We'll talk tomorrow." The call ended. Jungkook dropped the phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned him. Home felt like a place he'd never been. Across the ocean, Jimin sat with his seatbelt fastened long after the plane leveled out. The cabin lights dimmed, turning faces into ghosts. His reflection in the window looked older, thinner around the eyes. Every time the plane shuddered, his heart lurched, not from fear of falling, but from the image of Jungkook standing alone in the terminal, hands empty. A flight attendant leaned closer. "Sir, would you like some water?" "Yes," Jimin said automatically, then added, "Please." The word felt important. Courtesy was a way of holding himself together. When the water came, his phone buzzed under the tray table. No signal, no messages. He stared at the dark screen, thumb hovering, then pressed his forehead against the window, eyes closing. The sky outside was endless, indifferent. He whispered, so quietly no one could hear, "I'm sorry." Back in the city, night turned into a blur of headlights and rain. Jungkook drove without music, the silence inside the car pressing against his ears. Every red light felt like judgment. Every reflection in the windshield looked like someone he used to be. At home, he didn't turn on the lights. He dropped his keys, kicked off his shoes, and sank onto the floor with his back against the door. The apartment smelled faintly of detergent and something warm, Jimin's shampoo, still lingering on a hoodie draped over the chair. That broke him. He grabbed the hoodie, fists bunching the fabric, burying his face in it. The sound that tore out of his chest was raw and uncontrolled, a sob he didn't recognize as his own. He hated himself for being weak, for making things worse, for loving so openly it became a liability. His phone lit up in his hand. Unknown number. He wiped his face with the sleeve and answered. Hello. Are you alone? Jimin's voice crackled through the line, low, urgent. Jungkook sucked in a breath so sharp it hurt. You have signal. Barely, Jimin said. I didn't want to wait. Jungkook pressed the phone to his ear like it might disappear. You shouldn't call. They'll track. I know, Jimin cut in. I don't care, not tonight. The words sent a dangerous warmth through Jungkook's chest. Where are you? Somewhere above the clouds, Jimin said, a bitter smile in his voice. Running away like I always do. That's not fair, Jungkook said, anger flaring suddenly, surprising them both. You're not running, you're being dragged. And you, Jimin asked quietly, what are you doing? Jungkook hesitated, trying not to fall apart. There was a soft sound on the line, like Jimin shifting in his seat. Did they hurt you? No, Jungkook said. Just my pride and maybe my career. Jimin exhaled slowly. I'm sorry. The words landed heavy between them. I didn't want to leave like that, Jimin continued. I wanted something calmer, something that didn't feel like the world was watching us bleed. Jungkook's jaw tightened. The world's always watching. I know, Jimin said. That's why I had to go. Jungkook stood, packing the dark room. Then why call me? Because I needed to hear your voice before I start pretending I'm okay, Jimin replied. Because if I don't, I'll convince myself what we have isn't real. Jungkook stopped moving. It's real, he said fiercely. It's the realest thing I have. So do I, Jimin whispered, and that's what scares me. They stayed like that, breathing together through miles and noise and risk. Jungkook imagined Jimin's fingers worrying the edge of his sleeve, the way he did when anxious. Jimin imagined Jungkook's eyes, dark and unguarded, when he stopped pretending to be fearless. When I land, Jimin said, everything changes. Jungkook closed his eyes. Then let it change, just don't disappear. I won't, Jimin promised. I'm not leaving you, I'm just surviving. Jungkook swallowed hard. Come back to me. A pause, the kind that held truth inside it. I will, Jimin said, and when I do, we won't hide. The connection crackled, the signal fading. I love you, Jungkook said quickly, reckless and sincere. The line went quiet for a heartbeat, then Jimin's voice returned, steady despite everything. I love you too. The call ended. Jungkook stood alone in the dark apartment, phone warm in his hand, heart still aching but no longer hollow. Outside, the rain slowed, the city settling into a tired hush. He didn't know how much damage had been done, how many consequences were waiting, or how long the distance would last. But for the first time since the riot, he believed that letting go hadn't meant losing everything. Morning came without mercy. Jungkook woke to the sound of his phone vibrating nonstop, the light cutting through his closed eyes like a blade. For a split second, he thought it might be Jimin again, calling from some impossible place between time zones and fear. But the screen told a different story, dozens of missed calls, messages stacked like accusations, headlines already forming narratives he hadn't agreed to. He sat up, hair a mess, throat dry. The hoodie lay beside him on the floor, wrinkled and empty. Reality settled in slowly, heavy as a bruise. He scrolled. Airport meltdown sparks concern. Unprofessional behavior shocks fans. Who was the man Jungkook refused to let go of? His jaw tightened. They always asked the wrong question. The doorbell rang. Jungkook froze. No one rang his bell unannounced unless something was wrong. He stood, every muscle tense, and opened the door to find two familiar faces and one unfamiliar expression, tight, controlled, furious. We need to talk, the CEO said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. The apartment suddenly felt too small. They sat across from each other, silence stretching until it vibrated. Jungkook leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Say it, he said. Whatever version of me you've already decided on. The CEO exhaled slowly. You crossed a line. Jungkook laughed bitter. I drew one for once. This isn't about your feelings, the manager snapped. This is about contracts, public trust, control. Control, Jungkook repeated softly, and something dangerous sparked behind his eyes. That's the word you always come back to. The CEO's gaze hardened. You are a public figure. Your private life is not private when it affects. My private life is mine, Jungkook cut in, voice rising. I didn't hurt anyone, I didn't lie, I didn't pretend. You caused chaos, the manager said. People were injured. Jungkook's shoulders stiffened. That wasn't me. It doesn't matter, the CEO replied coolly. Perception matters, and right now perception says you're unstable. The word hit like a slap. Jungkook straightened. Say it again. Be careful, the manager warned. No, Jungkook said, stepping forward. You don't get to label me because I refuse to perform obedience. Silence crashed down, thick and suffocating. The CEO stood. We're suspending your activities until further notice. You'll release a statement. You'll apologize. Jungkook felt his pulse in his ears. And if I do? The answer came without hesitation. Then we'll make sure you regret it. Something in Jungkook snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. He smiled, slow and unsettling. I already regret enough, he said. I won't regret telling the truth. The manager stared at him. Think about what you're throwing away. Jungkook's voice was quiet now, terrifyingly calm. I already did, at the airport. They left without another word. Jungkook stood alone again, the echo of their footsteps fading. His hands trembled, but his chest felt strangely clear. Fear was there, yes, but beneath it something steadier. Resolve. Across the ocean, Jimin stepped into a conference room that smelled like coffee and tension. The people waiting for him smiled too quickly, eyes too sharp. You're late, one of them said. My flight was delayed, Jimin replied evenly, setting his bag down. They exchanged looks. We saw. Of course they had. A tablet slid across the table toward him. Frozen on the screen was an image of Jungkook at the airport, arms locked around Jimin like the world was ending. Jimin's breath caught despite himself. Care to explain? The woman asked. Jimin met her gaze. That was a human moment. That was a liability, another voice said. You were supposed to be invisible. Jimin leaned back in his chair, fingers lacing together. I was never invisible. You just chose not to see me. The room went still. You're jeopardizing years of careful planning, the woman said. Associations like that create questions. Questions don't scare me, Jimin replied. Lies do. A beat, then another. You're getting emotionally compromised, someone said. Jimin smiled, thin and sharp. No, I'm getting honest. They didn't like that. Hours later, alone in a hotel room, Jimin finally allowed himself to breathe. He locked the door, slid down against it, and pulled out his phone. There were messages from Jungkook he hadn't seen yet, sent before the suspension hit. I don't know what happens next. But I'm not taking it back. Not us. Jimin's hands shook as he typed. Neither am I. Whatever they do to us, I choose you. The reply came almost instantly. Then I'll endure anything. Jimin closed his eyes, pressing his phone to his chest. The distance still hurt. The danger was real, closing in from all sides, but something had shifted. They were no longer reacting. They were deciding. Back in the city, Jungkook stepped out onto his balcony as night fell, the air cool against his skin. Below, the city pulsed, unaware of the quiet rebellion taking shape above it. He whispered into the dark, not knowing if Jimin was awake, not knowing if the world would ever let them be free. I'm still here. And for the first time, despite everything they stood to lose, Jungkook believed that was enough. The press conference room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Jungkook stood behind the curtain, listening to the low murmur of reporters, the clicking of cameras already impatient, already hungry. His stylist hovered nearby, hands restless, as if she could smooth the tension out of the air if she tried hard enough. You can still read the statement as written, the manager whispered. Say the right words, apologize, let this die quietly. Jungkook didn't look at him. He stared at his own reflection in the black screen of a monitor, eyes darker than he remembered, jaw set in a way that felt unfamiliar and inevitable. If I do that, Jungkook said, voice low, I lose myself. The manager swallowed. If you don't, you lose everything else. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Then maybe it's time. Before anyone could stop him, he stepped forward. The curtain slid back, light exploded, voices surged. Jungkook, is it true you caused the airport chaos? Who was the man with you? Are you in a secret relationship? He took his place at the podium, hands resting flat, grounding himself. The room quieted, not because they were polite, but because they sensed blood in the water. He leaned closer to the microphone. I won't apologize for loving someone, Jungkook said. The reaction was instant and violent. Gasps, shouts. A camera dropped to the floor with a sharp crack. Are you confirming a relationship? Someone yelled. Is it Jimin? Another voice pushed, reckless and loud. Jungkook's pulse thundered, but his voice didn't shake. I'm confirming that I'm human. The manager's face drained of color. This industry taught me how to smile while suffocating, Jungkook continued. At the airport, I didn't suffocate. I held on. A reporter stood abruptly. Do you realize the damage you're causing? Fans feel betrayed. Jungkook's eyes snapped to him. Betrayal is lying. I didn't lie. The room erupted again, questions overlapping, accusations flying. Jungkook stepped back from the mic, chest tight, heart racing, not from fear but from relief. The truth tasted dangerous and clean. Miles away, Jimin watched the live stream on his phone, standing alone in a narrow hallway between meetings that suddenly felt meaningless. His breath caught when Jungkook said his piece, each word slicing through years of silence. You idiot, Jimin whispered, voice breaking. Brave, stupid idiot. A hand grabbed Jimin's wrist. What are you doing? The woman from the conference room hissed, eyes flicking to the screen. Turn that off. Jimin didn't. He pulled his arm free. He just burned his world down. And you're smiling, she said coldly. Because he finally stopped being afraid, Jimin replied. Her gaze sharpened. You're implicated now. I was always implicated, Jimin said quietly. I just pretended I was. That night, the internet exploded. Support clashed violently with outrage. Headlines contradicted each other by the minute. Jungkook's name trended worldwide, tangled with words like scandal, courage, betrayal, love. Jungkook sat alone afterward in a quiet room, adrenaline fatting, leaving exhaustion behind. His phone buzzed once. Jimin. Jungkook answered immediately. Did you see it? Yes, Jimin said. His voice was tight, emotional. Are you out of your mind? Jungkook laughed softly. Probably. They're going to come for you, Jimin said. Harder than before. I know, Jungkook replied. But I didn't do it to be reckless. I did it so you wouldn't feel alone. Silence stretched between them, heavy and intimate. You've changed everything, Jimin finally said. So have you, Jungkook replied. You just did it quietly. Jimin exhaled, something between a laugh and a sob. They confronted me today, they know. Jungkook's stomach dropped. Are you safe? For now, Jimin said, but they want me to deny it, to erase you. And will you? Jimin didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. No. Jungkook closed his eyes, chest aching. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. I'm not, Jimin said. I'm choosing myself, and you're part of that. The words settled deep, warming places Jungkook hadn't realized were frozen. I wish I could touch you, Jungkook admitted. I wish I could stand in front of you and tell you you did well, Jimin replied. I wish the world wasn't so cruel. Jungkook smiled sadly. It is, but we're worse. Jimin laughed then, really laughed, and the sound was everything Jungkook had missed. Come to me, Jungkook said suddenly. Jimin went quiet. That's dangerous. I don't care, Jungkook replied. Let them see us standing together, let them choke on it. Another pause, longer this time. I'll find a way, Jimin said softly. I promise. When the call ended, Jungkook sat back, staring at the ceiling, heart still racing. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring: lawsuits, exile, silence, ruin. But he knew this. He had spoken with his own voice. And somewhere across the world, Jimin was no longer hiding either. The night Jimin returned, the city felt like it was holding its breath. Jungkook waited in his apartment with the lights off, curtains drawn, phone face down on the table like it might betray them if it lit up. Every sound outside, tires on wet asphalt, a distant siren, laughter from somewhere below, set his nerves on edge. He hadn't slept. He didn't trust sleep not to steal this moment away. The door clicked. Jungkook was on his feet before he realized he'd moved. Jimin stepped inside quietly, hood pulled low, shoulders tense like he expected the walls themselves to report him. For a second, neither of them spoke. They just stared, the space between them charged, dangerous, electric. Then Jungkook crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed him. Not gentle, not careful. Jimin gasped as Jungkook slammed the door shut behind him and pulled him close, hands gripping his coat like he might disappear again if loosened even a little. You're insane, Jimin breathed, forehead pressed to Jungkook's shoulder. Do you know what kind of trouble this causes? Jungkook's voice was rough, almost angry. You came anyway. Jimin laughed softly, broken. Of course I did. Jungkook pulled back just enough to look at him, eyes blazing. They followed you. No, Jimin said. I made sure. And if you're lying, Jungkook challenged. Then I wanted this badly enough to risk it, Jimin replied, just as fiercely. That was all it took. Jungkook kissed him. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't hesitant. It was months of restraint detonating at once, teeth knocking, breath stolen, hands shaking as they clutched at each other like survivors. Jimin made a sound low in his throat, half protest, half surrender, fingers digging into Jungkook's hair as if anchoring himself to something real. They broke apart only to breathe, foreheads touching, chests heaving. You shouldn't be here, Jungkook said, even as his hands slid down Jimin's back, memorizing him again. I know, Jimin said. Say it again. You'll lose everything. Jimin's eyes burned. I already was. Jungkook swallowed hard. They suspended me. They're threatening lawsuits, silence clauses, exile. Jimin cupped his face, thumb brushing away a tear Jungkook hadn't realized had fallen. I watched you stand alone in front of the world and refuse to lie. Don't you dare apologize for that. I'm not sorry, Jungkook said. I'm angry. So am I, Jimin replied. I'm tired of being brave in secret. They sat on the edge of the couch, knees touching, tension humming between them like a live wire. Jimin pulled back his hood, finally letting himself be seen, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. They want me to release a denial, Jimin said quietly. A clean one, convincing. They said if I don't, they'll make sure I never work again. Jungkook's jaw tightened. And I told them no, Jimin said. I told them I'm done being erased. Jungkook stared at him, awe and fear colliding in his chest. You're braver than me. Jimin shook his head. No, I'm just done running. Silence settled, thick but not empty. What if this destroys us? Jungkook asked, the doubt slipping out despite himself. What if loving me costs you everything? Jimin leaned in, voice low and steady. What if not loving you already did? Jungkook closed his eyes at that, breath hitching. Jimin rested his forehead against Jungkook, grounding him. I don't want us to be a scandal, Jimin said. I want us to be real. We are, Jungkook replied, even when it hurts. A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. They froze. Another knock followed, louder this time. Jungkook's heart slammed into his ribs. Did you tell anyone? No, Jimin whispered. The knocking came again, insistent. Jungkook moved instinctively, placing himself slightly in front of Jimin as he approached the door. He opened it a crack. The manager stood there, eyes dark, jaw tight. So, he said coldly, gaze flicking past Jungkook to where Jimin stood in full view. It's true. Jungkook opened the door fully. Say what you came to say. The manager stepped inside without invitation. You realize how reckless this is. Jimin straightened. Reckless is forcing people to live half-lives. The manager laughed humorlessly. You think love makes you immune to consequences. No, Jungkook said. We think it makes them worth facing. The room felt like it might explode. You're choosing each other over everything we built, the manager said. No, Jimin corrected. We're choosing ourselves. The manager stared at them, two figures standing side by side, unyielding. Something like frustration and something like fear flickered across his face. This will get ugly, he warned. Jungkook didn't flinch. We already survived ugly. When the door finally closed behind him, the apartment fell silent again. Jimin let out a shaky breath. That went badly. Jungkook laughed, breathless. Yeah. They turned to each other, the weight of everything pressing down, and instead of breaking, they held. Whatever came next, backlash, loss, chaos, they would meet it together, not hiding, not apologizing. For the first time, the world wasn't deciding for them. They were. Dawn crept in like a witness that hadn't been invited. Jungkook and Jimin sat on the kitchen floor, backs against the cabinets, coffee untouched on the counter. Neither of them had slept. Every time Jungkook closed his eyes, he saw headlines forming. Every time Jimin breathed too deeply, he felt the weight of decisions crashing down on his chest. Jimin broke the silence first. They're not going to stop. Jungkook nodded. I know. They'll isolate you, Jimin continued. Turn people against you. They'll make it sound like you're unstable, selfish, corrupted. Jungkook huffed a quiet laugh. They already started. Jimin turned toward him sharply. I'm serious. So am I, Jungkook replied, meeting his gaze. I've lived my whole life being shaped into something convenient. This is the first choice that actually feels like mine. Jimin searched his face, eyes softening. And if this choice ruins you? Jungkook leaned his head back against the cabinet, staring at the ceiling. Then at least I'll know who I was when it happened. That scared Jimin more than anger ever could. Jimin stood abruptly, packing the small kitchen. You talk like you're ready to burn. I am, Jungkook said. I just didn't expect to burn so fast. Jimin stopped in front of him. You think I'm not afraid? Jungkook looked up. Then tell me. Jimin's voice cracked. I'm terrified that one day you'll wake up and realize I wasn't worth the cost. Jungkook stood, closing the distance instantly. Don't you ever say that. Jimin's breath shook. This industry eats people alive. It leaves nothing behind. I don't want to be the reason you disappear. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's wrists, not rough but desperate. You're the reason I exist right now. The words hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Jimin's eyes filled, anger and love colliding. You're not allowed to put that much weight on me. I'm not putting it on you, Jungkook said. I'm sharing it. A phone buzzed on the counter. They both froze. Jungkook glanced at the screen. His name trended again, this time alongside a leaked still. Jimin entering the apartment the night before, hood down, face clear. Jimin felt the blood drain from his face. They followed me. Jungkook's jaw clenched. They waited. Almost immediately, calls poured in. Unknown numbers, executives, lawyers, media. Jungkook silenced the phone. Jimin stared at him. You can't ignore this. I can for 5 minutes, Jungkook said. I need you to hear something first. Jimin swallowed. What? Jungkook took a breath, steadying himself. If you walk away now, I won't chase you. I'll understand. I won't blame you. Jimin stared at him in disbelief. Is this you letting me go? No, Jungkook said softly. This is me respecting you. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. You think I came all this way just to run? I think you deserve the choice, Jungkook replied. Jimin stepped closer, voice low and fierce. Then listen to mine. He pressed his hand flat against Jungkook's chest. I choose the truth. I choose you. I choose whatever comes next, even if it ruins us. Jungkook's breath hitched. Jimin. Don't interrupt me, Jimin said sharply. I've spent years being quiet, I'm done. He pulled his phone out and unlocked it, fingers steady despite the storm outside. They want silence, I'll give them honesty. Jungkook's eyes widened. What are you doing? Jimin turned the screen toward him. A drafted post filled the display, simple, devastating, impossible to misinterpret. This is not a rumor. This is not a scandal. This is someone I love. Jungkook's throat closed. Once you post that, there's no going back. Jimin met his gaze. Good. Before Jungkook could stop him, Jimin pressed publish. The world detonated. Within seconds, notifications exploded. Messages, alerts, reactions swinging violently between devotion and rage. Jungkook's phone lit up again, unstoppable now. Jungkook dragged a hand down his face, heart racing. You just set everything on fire. Jimin exhaled shakily, then smiled small, fearless, real. Then stand with me. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He took Jimin's phone, typed with trembling fingers, and posted his own response. I told you the truth already. I'm not taking it back. They sat there as the noise outside grew deafening, the internet howling, the industry reeling. Somewhere, contracts were being torn up. Somewhere else, people felt seen for the first time. Jimin leaned into Jungkook's side, exhaustion finally catching up. Are we insane? Jungkook wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. Probably. Jimin laughed softly, tears slipping free. I don't regret it. Neither do I, Jungkook said, kissing the top of his head. No matter what happens. Outside, the sun rose fully now, light spilling through the window, exposing everything they'd tried to hide. They didn't look away. For the first time, they let the world see them exactly as they were, unprotected, unapologetic, and together. The storm didn't end all at once. It softened, slowly, like a tide pulling back after wrecking the shore. The days that followed were brutal and quiet in equal measure. Jungkook and Jimin stayed inside, phones turned face down, curtains half drawn, letting the world rage without them for a while. Lawyers spoke in careful tones. Contracts dissolved. Invitations vanished. Some friends disappeared too, slipping away without confrontation, unable or unwilling to stand in the open with them. It hurt more than either of them admitted. One evening, as rain traced thin lines down the window, Jimin sat on the couch scrolling through messages he hadn't opened before. His face tightened, then softened. What is it? Jungkook asked from the kitchen. Jimin hesitated. It's not all bad. Jungkook came to sit beside him. Jimin handed him the phone. Among the noise and cruelty were messages that felt like small lights, people thanking them, strangers saying they felt seen for the first time, quiet words of solidarity that asked for nothing in return. Jungkook swallowed hard. I didn't think it would reach anyone. Jimin leaned his head against Jungkook's shoulder. Truth always does, it just takes time. They talked late into the night, not about strategies or damage control, but about ordinary things they'd postponed for years. Places they wanted to walk without hiding. Mornings without schedules. A life that wasn't measured in approval. I don't know what my future looks like anymore, Jungkook admitted, voice low. Jimin smiled faintly. Neither do I. That uncertainty used to terrify them. Now it felt honest. Weeks passed. The world recalibrated. The headlines moved on as they always did. Jungkook lost some doors forever, but others, unexpected and quieter, opened. Music came back to him differently, no longer a cage but a language he chose to speak. Jimin found work that didn't demand erasure, spaces where his voice wasn't treated as a liability. One afternoon, they stood at the same airport again, not hiding, not running. No crowd this time. No alarms, just the hum of movement and the echo of footsteps. Jungkook glanced around, heart beating fast. Do you feel it too? Jimin nodded. The memory. Jungkook took Jimin's hand openly. No one stopped them. A few people looked. Most didn't care. Jungkook smiled, breath unsteady. Last time I couldn't let go. Jimin squeezed his hand. This time you don't have to. They didn't cling. They didn't break. They stood side by side, grounded, choosing presence over fear. As they walked forward together, Jungkook felt something settle inside him, not the absence of pain, but the certainty that it had meaning. Loving Jimin hadn't saved him from loss, but it had saved him from disappearing. And that was enough. Because in the end, the riot faded, the noise dissolved, and what remained was simple and unbreakable. Two people who chose truth over silence, each other over fear, and a life that finally belonged to them.